Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join our webinar called What AML Teams Need to Know About Working in the Cloud. My name is Anu Sood, and I'm the Director of Marketing at CaseWare RCM and today's moderator. Now, as many of you know, FIs are facing a number of challenges today. For one, with the recent pandemic, we have more staff working from home, which means that AML compliance teams need to have remote access to vital data and systems. There's also the issue that FIs in general are dealing with increased number of transactions and not only need to screen more, but need to screen more kinds of transactions and screen faster. And finally, FIs need to be able to quickly introduce new products. They have to worry about security and privacy while still controlling IT costs. And of course, they have to ensure that they're complying with AML regulations, which means ensuring that they're doing enough to do business with bad actors, that they're not doing business with bad actors, and that they're detecting suspicious activities. Now, I just listed just a tiny fraction of what FIs need to worry about. And the issues I mentioned may seem that they're not really connected, but they do in fact have a common thread, and that's the cloud. So in today's presentation, we're departing from our usual AML topics and focusing on infrastructure issues that support compliance teams. Now, the format of today's presentation is a little different. The presentation portion is quite short, and instead we're going to focus on some audience questions. We've received a number of questions, and we'll answer as many as we can during this session or after the webinar. So a little bit about our presenters today. Corie Murray is a senior software architect at CaseWare RCM and the key technologist behind the initial solution 10 years ago. And also most recently, he's been the cloud-first architecture. He has led technical teams for more than a decade with his obsession with simple architecture and design to solve complex problems. Corie has a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of West Indies. James Poulin, also at CaseWare RCM, is extremely passionate about technology and building great services that people rely on. He has over 10 years of experience building, and sometimes breaking, software and technology infrastructure. He's enthusiastic about continuously learning and does everything from three-phase power in the data centers to detail off the PCIe feature within different processor families. Finally, we have Ben Cheng, who is a cloud solution architect at Microsoft Canada. He's a developer, a consultant, and a cloud advocate, and a dad joke connoisseur. Ben is passionate about empowering ISVs to achieve more with Azure. So in today's presentation, we'll review some of the basics about Microsoft Azure. We will then discuss why the cloud is relevant to compliance team. And finally, we'll get into the Q&A portion of the presentation. And with that, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Ben.
Thanks, Anu. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on which time zone you're in. So what is Azure? Azure is Microsoft's public cloud offering. It's based on an ever-expanding set of development and productivity tools and services to really empower organizations to achieve more and to innovate. In a nutshell, Azure provides the services that allows developers of these organizations to really just focus on app development and the organizations to really focus on just their core business without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure. In terms of its presence, Azure is global. Currently, Azure has a total of 61 data center regions across 140 countries. This allows customers to run their apps close to their customers and their employees wherever they are. But more importantly, this allows customers to meet any local data residency requirements. In terms of performance, all the regions you see here are interconnected by a dedicated network of fiber optic cable to give customers those milliseconds of latency. Each region that you see here is actually made up of multiple data centers where every data center is equipped with its own independent power, networking, and cooling. This setup speaks to the resiliency that Azure provides. For example, should an issue arise in one data center, apps can fail over with confidence to the next available data center or even region for that matter, so customers are not impacted. In terms of security, Azure makes significant investments annually and employs thousands of dedicated security professionals. To start, Azure sets a secure foundation by taking a multi-layered approach, both with its physical and operational security. For example, in terms of physical security, a person would have to pass through multiple physical layers from the building parameter to the building to the actual server rooms and provide multiple forms of identification to gain access to any data center and its resources. In terms of operational security, Microsoft has dedicated teams of security testers with the sole responsibility of attacking Azure, plugging security holes, finding security holes before any of the bad actors do. We also have built-in tools to help customers secure their environments, such as out-of-box identity management and built-in monitoring, which I believe James will touch on in terms of how he's using these tools with Nalessa. Finally, Microsoft offers threat protection that's built on intelligence gained by trillions of signals that are collected daily from device scans and user accounts. In terms of compliance, to date, we have 90 plus compliance offerings, which I believe is the deepest and broadest set in the industry. We at Microsoft feel pretty fortunate to say that we have over 95% of the Fortune 500 companies innovating with Azure. As you can see from the list of companies, they range from varying sizes and they span across different industries, from retail to automotive to airlines. They're all doing some pretty awesome things. Finally, to close, I just want to highlight some of the recent work that we're doing with partners. For example, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, they announced a couple months ago that they're partnering with us to host their flagship investment platform, Aladdin, in Azure as a means of unlocking new capabilities and providing added value to their customers. And I believe last month, FedEx announced a new multi-year collaboration with us to help transform the commerce landscape by leveraging Azure. And lastly, closer to Canadian soil, Loblaws, our leading food and pharmacy retailer, partnered with us to leverage our AI machine learning capabilities as part of their ongoing digital transformation.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good day so far. My name is Corie, and today I want to walk you through our journey to the cloud. Yes, so why did we choose the public cloud? Well, the cloud offered many things, that appealed to our vision of what the product should be. It allowed us to budget effectively for several innovation projects that we had. The truth is that we had a lot that we were trying to do, and we wanted to get everything out pretty rapidly. So with the cloud offerings, we were able to set up several research and development teams, and everyone had access to resources that would allow us to run all these things in parallel. And with some of the key tenets of the cloud computing, like utility pricing, self-service provisioning, virtualized infrastructure, resources, extensive management and automation already built into the Azure platform, we basically found ourselves almost giddy with excitement, just thinking of all the things we would be able to do. This is a completely different way of thinking about development and the maintenance and of our software. So as a business, our long-term strategy is to gain a competitive advantage with a lot of frequent releases and deployment agility to maintain a relevance in the space that we're in. The Azure cloud lends itself very nicely to that, So, that strategy is going to be very easy to implement because Azure offers, the ability to seamlessly integrate with a plethora of software development tools. We were able to manage the entire software development lifecycle within the engineering team, and there was not much dependency on IT, right? And this is a very important point, right? Because delays can have a negative impact on our velocity as a group, and the overall market strategy would be impacted, because at the end of the day, we want to be agile and we want to be able to release features as they come very quickly, right? So ultimately, we were able to focus on writing code that has a clear business value to our customers, and not have to worry about a lot of the infrastructure related code, or boilerplate code as we call it in the industry, we didn't have to worry about pushing that on the development team. The architectural benefits were immediate. This is what I love to do. I like working with software architecture in general. And not only were we able to rapidly scale our APIs to meet the demand automatically, but we could also scale down whenever resources were not being used. The off-the-shelf analytics were awesome. The AI building blocks allowed us to be responsive to changes within the industry, as well as changes in terms of customer requirements. It also allowed us to speak or to act very quickly when there were regulatory requirements as well. The fact that money laundering is a constant threat to most FIs, and there's a concerted effort on the part of bad actors to circumvent the controls that are in place, we had to be able to be agile enough to deal with these changes or deal with the way that the bad actors were responding to what we were doing in a very agile manner. There's also disaster recovery, there's logging and monitoring, and these are all fundamental building blocks, and that allowed us to focus on the development of the core business features and leave everything else to the Azure framework. And if you think about it, economically, this just works for a business, right? The Azure pricing model allows us to budget effectively for several innovation projects, and we could run all of them at the same time. The good thing is that you only pay for what you use, so that's awesome. The cloud allowed us to think about the solutions that require compute power as just another resource you provision when you need it. Being able to track and manage the cost at a granular level was also very attractive to us as a business. With real-time interactive cost analysis dashboards and recommendations for reducing costs, we were able to budget more effectively. Another big point for me was the fact that we didn't need any capital expenditure to get up and running. There was no need. We didn't have to purchase any IT hardware or any kind of resources to get everything set up. We would just go in to the portal and we'd rent what we need, and we would get going from there. And with that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to my colleague, James Poulin, and he will walk you through some of the security features of the cloud and how we took advantage of them.
Thanks, Corie. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on the time zone, I guess. Or if you're lucky, good afternoon, or evening, I should say. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Azure security aspect and what it kind of gives us from a cloud operations perspective. What we're looking at here is a screenshot of the Azure Security Center. And this is a tool that our Alessa Cloud Operations team is able to use to get a single pane of glass view of all of our Azure resources and assess kind of their security standpoint and how secure they are in our deployments. Not only does it give us that nice 1,000-foot view of everything, it then allows us to drill down to specific resources to spot problems early and identify areas that may need improvement. This tool also gives us the ability to set up alerts and continuous monitoring so that if anything changes or we deploy new things and need to spot areas that may be of concern, this tool allows us to spot those issues quickly and address them immediately. Make sure we're always seeing what's in front of us. As part of the security center, it also has built-in regulatory compliance view of all of our infrastructure as well. So this gives us a view of all of our pieces and how we're trending towards our certifications and ensuring that we're maintaining compliance with everything that we deploy. And this gives us a really great viewpoint of how to maintain all of those security certifications moving forward, and so that everything is as secure as it possibly could be. Additionally, this kind of infographic gives us a good viewpoint of sort of the flexibility of Azure in how we are able to use the various tiers to maintain high availability disaster recovery and ensuring backup. And we're able to leverage the global Azure footprint to ensure that we can provide things like resiliency and redundancy while maintaining data sovereignty rules that may be in place for our various customers. Now, what presentation these days wouldn't be complete without discussing the challenges of the world today. So one of the things that the Azure platform really gives us the ability to do is provide remote work enablement for all of our customers, because it's a truly public public and available cloud platform. It's accessible from anywhere, so we're able to actually enable this service, the software as a service offering, to remote workers as well as on-premise workers. And this solution is available out of the box. And using this platform, we implement the best-in-breed security processes to ensure that while all this remote work is happening, all the connection and everything back into the cloud are as secure as possible. Specifically around privacy, the Azure platform gives us a lot of great tools to ensure we maintain data privacy for all of our customers. So there's a great foundation in place that is continuously evolving and growing and implementing newest features available for data security. A really good example of this is things like TLS 1.3 implementations, and this encryption process is one of the latest available, and it's almost available to us. It's available to us almost at the click of a button. We can maintain and deploy that immediately, so that our customers are getting the best security features available as of this point.
Thanks, James. All right, so that's all well and good. Now we know everything about Azure. We know what it can do. We know what's available. But how does this really translate into the Alessa platform itself? Specifically, how does it help us with our anti-money laundering offering? So how do we use our newfound power with Azure, right? We were able to release several products in the AML space that took advantage of the Azure cloud. Our continuous monitoring solution can adapt to meet the needs of all our customers. Now, this was a problem we had in the early days of the release, or the AML release, where the processing power would depend on what's available in a particular organization's IT infrastructure, right? So, we would have delays based on we need to provision new hardware, the IT team needs to order it needs to come in. We no longer had that problem. Another thing that happened, or that the cloud allowed us to do, was to process big data. So big data processing was no longer a challenge. With geo redundancy and high throughput storage and high availability compute, we were able to grow in tandem with the business needs. So if your business is growing and you have an implementation or AML implementation, we could grow the software deployment to meet the needs of the organization at any point in time. We made remarkable strides with our sanction screening and watcher screening solution. Truly remarkable. I have to say that, based on where we were a few years ago and where we are now, I think we have made a very big jump in terms of, focusing on performance, speed, correctness, and repeatability. And not only do we offer high scalability APIs for real-time screening, but the batch processing platform that we've introduced allows us to process millions of entity profiles in record time. I won't get into the details of how we were able to achieve that, but the key here is the high throughput and the really fast storage and scalable compute that's available in the cloud. Or everything comes together to give us all those different pieces that we need to accelerate the performance of the actual screening and the compute. We can continuously screen these entities for all our customers daily. It doesn't really matter the size. If it's a large customer with millions or tens of millions of customers, we can screen them weekly, daily, depending on the business requirements. In terms of transaction monitoring, we were able to create a solution for batch and real-time monitoring with integration options to block suspicious transactions. And this can be done, with or without intervention from your compliance teams, right? So you could have an active implementation or a passive implementation where we just say, these are the issues that we see, that we detect, and you can decide as a business whether or not you want to block the transaction or you just want to have it for reporting purposes or what have you. We also take advantage of many of the analytical capabilities on offer, including specific AI and machine learning modules. For example, we have deployed new natural language and linguistic models in order to improve the correctness of our sanctions screening offering. Anomaly and fraud detection and AI models is also deployed for all our transaction monitoring deployments. The cloud allows us to integrate seamlessly and securely with your on-premises line of business applications. So if you want to be able to block a transaction from going through, we can integrate with your on-premises applications using some kind of middleware and connecting to the cloud to allow us to block the transactions for you. We also offer a portal for your compliance team to log in, look at the activity, and decide what they want to do with the transactions that were detected as possibly fraudulent. We also offer multiple deployment options, from a hybrid option where some components are deployed on premises to a fully cloud-hosted implementation.
Yeah, so before we start the Q&A portion of the presentation, I just want to highlight a few key points that were mentioned by Ben, Corie, and James. So the first one is that the move to Microsoft Azure has enabled CaseWare as an organization to basically have a large team of IT specialists behind us, and and really allow us to focus on enhancing the functionality available at Alessa. So, and while that's it's been a benefit for us and a benefit for our customers, some of the values that Corie had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation will apply to you as well. So not just a benefit to us, but a benefit to you as a financial institution. Moving to the cloud has enabled us to increase the speed of deployments and rollout of new features. So it allows us to be more responsive to our customer needs, and from a customer perspective, it allows them to get the functionality that they need sooner. Like Corie mentioned, you don't have to put the entire AML functionality in the cloud. You can pick and choose what you need, and so you can either take a phased-in approach, or you can just do an all-in-one approach. So based on our experience, we do recommend that AML teams seriously consider taking advantage of the cloud. And there's some key values that we'd like to remind people, and that one is performance. You're able to process millions of transactions quickly. And so you can do that across business lines, across different products, and be able to ensure that you're screening them all. The high availability ensures that you're maintaining compliance at all times. You're not having to just let a transaction through because your compliance system is not available. As you grow, as you scale, you can just add resources as you need it, and then you pay for what you use, like Corie mentioned. You don't have to buy in advance because you will scale eventually. You buy the infrastructure as you need it. And finally, we all know that fraud schemes are becoming more complex, and it's becoming harder to just rely on rules-based analytics to detect suspicious activities. So the Microsoft Azure platform allows us to our customers to leverage some of the newer technologies like anomaly detection and machine learning to be able to detect those suspicious activities. So with that, I'd like to start with the Q&A section. And our first question is, do I need to buy additional hardware or software to move to the cloud?
Okay, so I'll take that one. I know it's Corie. No, there's absolutely no need for new hardware or software to use Alessa. However, you might have specific business requirements that warrant additional resources. For example, let's say you're trying to implement transaction monitoring where you want to integrate with our APIs to make sure that you can detect when a transaction should be blocked. Then you might have to invest in some middleware technology if you don't already have it. But in general, I would say no, you don't need any type of new hardware or software.
Yeah, it's Ben, and just to add on to what Corie said, so depending on, it's really situational, right? So, especially for customers that are potentially looking to extend their on-premise network, there may be a need to acquire some of those network devices, but again, that's on a situational basis.
Do I need additional IT resources to manage cloud infrastructure?
Absolutely not. No, you do not. Our DevOps and engineering team will manage everything in the cloud for you. That's pretty much what they do. You might require some IT help to get integration and security configurations implemented, but outside of that, we handle everything 100% on the DevOps side.
This is a tricky one. What's the uptime of the cloud?
Yeah, it depends on the resource, to be honest. In general, I think you're going to see an SLA from between 99.9 to 99.99999, and it all depends on what components you have implemented. So in general, though, Azure will have different SLAs for different types of components. For example, if we're using Databricks for your analytic platform, then its SLA is 99.95. And in general, what we do is we'll give you the minimum SLA out of all the resources that we use in the implementation. So we might be using VMs, we might be using APIs, we might be using Databricks and cognitive services. So we'll pick the lowest one. We'll put the SLA for the lowest one, and that would be our SLA to the customer.
Okay, good.
And just to add on, in terms of SLAs, as Corie mentioned, the SLAs that are posted for those Azure components, they're actually backed by service credits. So in the event that Microsoft doesn't meet those SLAs for those particular components, service credits are given back to the customers.
What kind of data is stored in the cloud?
That's an interesting one. It differs from implementation to implementation, obviously, but for a fully hosted deployment, you will have possibly customer data, accounts, transaction data, or any other type of line of business data would be stored in Azure. Now, it depends on the implementation, because if you have a hybrid deployment, then you may also have a situation where all the data is stored on premises and then it is passed to the cloud just for compute purposes. So you won't necessarily have the data being in the cloud. However, it depends on the type of implementation that a particular customer has.
What's the process to move from on-premise to cloud?
Hey, it's James. So hopefully as minimal as possible is the goal usually. But it does change a little bit from client to client. Typically, what we see is there are changes in the way data movement occurs. So there are changes in how data moves into the cloud as we leverage kind of the Azure infrastructure in place, and as well as how client connectivity occurs and how clients are connecting back to the application itself.
Corie, I think what processes are done in the cloud?
Yeah, so we have a lot going on there. We have generalized processing including continuous monitoring, which can go across pretty much any business space. But we also have specialized processing specifically for AML, which includes things like transaction monitoring, sanction screening, risk profiling, and regulatory reporting. Those are the main processing that we do in Azure.
This comes up often. What kind of security features does the cloud have?
Yeah, so I'll handle that one. So it may actually be easier to answer what security feature it doesn't have. Leveraging the Azure platform gives us a lot of features available to ensure security. From a LESA perspective, we implement things like end-to-end encryption of all of our client connections using the latest TLS specifications, and we also use end-to-end encryption on all of our infrastructure, from virtual machines to data being held. So yeah, there's lots available there.
Yeah, and just to add on to the security features. So within Azure, we have a number of what we call first-class services that are essentially just native to Azure. But in addition to that, we have a plethora of third-party offerings that Microsoft has partnered with some major security companies. So for customers that are used to other types of security software, typically you can find it within the Azure Marketplace. And if they're more comfortable using that, they can just acquire it through the Marketplace as part of their offerings.
Okay. What about ISO certifications?
Yeah, so the Azure infrastructure itself, like Ben shared earlier, has potentially the broadest certification coverage available in the cloud, which is fantastic. So we build off of that, and we, with the LSA application, include our own ISO 27001 certification as part of that.
Yeah, it's been here too. Just to add on to that, we actually have a what we call a security trust portal that's available to, it's publicly available. It's a repository that contains our latest audits, our certifications across all three clouds. We actually have three clouds, maybe four if you count LinkedIn, Office 365, Azure, Dynamics. And so all the certifications for all those clouds can be found and downloaded to anyone. So perhaps something that we can share with the group later after the seminar, the webinar.
How do I make sure that I don't lose my existing data? I think that means
good question.
Migration, yes.
Yeah, good question. So from a LESA standpoint, the LESA Cloud Ops team is responsible for deploying our applications in as fault-tolerant a manner as possible. So we by doing that, we leverage a lot of the Azure infrastructure technologies available, like replication and backups, to ensure that data isn't lost in the event of any issues or outages.
And this applies to a lot of financial institutions. So if I have a branch in the US and another in Canada, how is our data managed?
Yeah, this is Corie again. I see this one a lot. Basically, this is a typical scenario that you'll see with our AML implementations, right? But to answer the question, we can replicate our assets in each region, right? We don't have to move the data. We could just move the implementation to suit the needs of the customer. So this will allow us to respect the data sovereignty requirements of the customer by deploying to the nearest available data center.
Yeah, and just to add on, folks, you may remember that I presented a map of all the regions. By design, within every country, we typically have at least 2 regions within the same country, and this is to have customers meet their data residency requirements, so that if one region does fail over, it fails over to another region with it bound by the same geo, bound by the same.
This one is probably a trickier one, but what is the fault tolerance of the system?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, this is an interesting one. And I get this question all the time. But the truth is, before migrating to Azure, we would be writing a lot of code to satisfy this requirement in terms of just being able to deal with failures, right? Whether, persistent or transient type failures. But luckily, it's basically built into the platform, into the Azure platform. Alessa takes full advantage of these features in terms of, just making things available with high availability using geo-replication. Also, we have the ability to deploy multiple instances of each and every component that we use or that we maintain for a particular implementation. So all of the tools are there and we take advantage of them. So, this is not really a problem when you use the public cloud.
All right, so I do have additional questions that have come in while we were answering the previous questions, and they vary everything from questions about integrations to certifications to cybersecurity. So I will present these questions, and we'll let the most qualified person take on the job of answering. So, Corie, I suspect the first one is for you. What about a financial institution's customer identification program that must now include additional legal entity screening capability with regards to beneficial owners and control persons? So I think this is a question around integration of data.
Okay, so normally what would happen is that if we have to integrate a particular customer with the screening APIs, we would have a workshop where we kind of work through what exactly you're trying to do. We will kind of explain to you how we think things will work, touch on all the different data points that you're trying to integrate, and come up with a plan. So part of the advent of going to the cloud is so that we can react to the different requirements of the different customers. So it's not it's never going to be a one size fits all, but we have the ability to react quickly and get you to where you need to be. If that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think it's worth highlighting that Alessa is integrated with a number of third-party list providers or risk intelligence providers. So companies like WorldCheck, their risk intelligence data files, as well as recently the EDD reports from WorldCheck, and a lot of those files or data lists have information about beneficial owners and control persons that you do need. So if you, the person who answered, the person who answered this question, if you have a more specific question that you need to address, feel free to email us at alessa@caseware.com, and we would be happy to address it even further. So the next question I have is, would I have to set up my own Azure for Alessa to work?
No, you would not. So that's where our DevOps teams come in. We would set up the infrastructure. At the end of the day, we will give you a URL or a connection string to upload, data if that's a requirement, or we'll give you the API URL so that you can make calls out to that API to get a response about sanction screening or transaction monitoring or something like that. So no, you absolutely do not need any DevOps experience or anything like that to be able to implement the Alessa platform.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to one of the values we mentioned, is that it takes some of the IT infrastructure work off your hands and passes it on to us as well as the Microsoft team. Should a SOC 2 report be provided before usage?
That's a tricky one. I know that we do provide that. We have a report that we can provide, and as well we should point out that the Azure cloud itself is compliant, is SOC 2 compliant, and you can actually go out and download the report if you need to.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add on, that's one of the reports that I mentioned that is available in the Service Trust portal for all the underlying components within Azure.
Yeah, and each organization may have their own certification needs, and so it's worth having that list and having that as part of the conversation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Have third parties conducted application validation of services on the cloud?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We have more than one organization or more than one provider that is that does assessments on whatever we offer, and this is a part of our as a business. This is part of what our strategy is. So we have to make sure that we can provide our customers with the guarantee that their information and their environment, their deployments are secure, and that we're taking steps to make sure that it remains that way, so that there's no one that can access their information, and we're keeping up to date with all the different threats that are out there. And yeah, so we do have a policy that says we have to do things to get the environment assessed and reported to our customers on a periodic basis. Or,
Anything you want to add, Ben?
report the findings.
Yeah, I think it was on one of James's slides. We actually have tools that help customers like CaseWare track that and monitor it and make sure everything is compliant. I think James showed it in one of the tool sets, but based on what compliance needs you're targeting, it would actually adhere to it and keep track and monitoring, and even potentially signal when compliance is met or not met. So it gives customers the sort of line of sight to make sure that the compliance is at the highest.
We're big fans of the security center.
Well, and so the next question I have is really around security, and specifically cybersecurity. What's the risk of a business being subjected to ransomware attacks?
That's a really good question. That risk is always present. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, that's something that just is kind of there all the time. So what our responsibility is to make sure that we protect against that risk within all of our deployments, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we do that. And one of those ways is so replication and backups to ensure that we have something to fall back to, and maintaining encryption across all of the channels we use, and then a really stringent security policy on kind of what is allowed in and out of our services to really minimize that attack surface.
This is a reminder that this is not just providers like CaseWare and Microsoft that need to be able to put in policies and procedures in place. The client also has to put in their own appropriate policies and procedures to protect their data. Yeah, so that is the end of our questions from our panelists. And so I think at this point, it would be a good time to conclude the presentation. And if you do have any more questions about Azure, and often you have those questions after you've had a moment to think about it, don't be afraid to reach out. We'd be happy to answer those questions. You can email us at alessa@caseware.com, or you can go to our website and go to the Contact Us page. With that, I'd like to thank you again for joining today's presentation, and I hope you have a great day.